Have you ever sat down to lesson plan before and felt totally stuck? You're staring at this blank lesson plan book or at the blinking cursor. We're just looking for that little bit of inspiration, that one spark that'll give us those great ideas that we can bring to class. If you've been there before, I've got your back. So in today's video, we're gonna talk about 10 ways to generate great lesson ideas. I'm Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook. Let's get started. Idea number one for creating great lesson ideas is to incorporate stories. Our brains are hardwired for stories. That's the way that we've passed information down through the generations. And for some reason, just our minds are able to wrap themselves around a new idea when it's brought in through a story. It makes things more concrete. And I really believe that there's a story in just about anything. So if we rack our brains and we think about the stories that we've heard or the things that we've gone through in our lives and how we can bring even a couple of small storytelling ideas or principles into what we're teaching, I think that can really help a lesson become alive. Number two is to use images, either for inspiration or for actually teaching in and of themselves. Our brains love images. We think in images a lot of the time. And so if we can put an interesting image up on the screen, or if we can use it as a writing prompt, or we can use it to spark students' curiosity, just bringing in images, looking at good images, incorporating more images into our lessons can really infuse a little bit of life into them. Number three is to incorporate pop culture. What's in the news? Sometimes all it takes is just to stop and to listen to what students are talking about and to kind of pay attention to it. Maybe talk to them about it and ask them questions. And then we can start to think, how can we learn a little bit more about this? And how can we start to incorporate that into lessons? And if we want to pull in our students' curiosity and interest, a lot of times, all we've got to do is just go to their world. Number four is to think about the experience that we want to create through this lesson. This comes from one of my favorite quotes from Dave Burgess's book, Teach Like a Pirate. He says, don't just teach a lesson, create an experience, because it's experiences that they're going to remember. And so what's the experience going to be? Is it going to be just students sitting in desks working on papers? Or can we get them up and move around? Can we change the lighting? Can we change the way that they interact together? Can we pull some of those elements in to create more of an experience? A way to get them connected to this idea other than just the simple, dry way of, delivering it the traditional way. Number five is to incorporate a really good essential question. I think if we ask students a really thought-provoking question that has to do with the bigger picture lessons that we're trying to learn from this particular lesson. If we can ask that really taps into their minds. It draws them into it and it makes them figure out where do they fall in the continuum of the answers to that question. And of course, the great thing about a really good question is if we ask it and students respond to it, they're curious to see how other people have responded to that too. I've found that for student response tools, something like a video response like Flipgrid, or a text response with something like Socrative. If we give students one of these really thought-provoking questions, give them a chance to respond to it, and then see what other people have written, that can really bring a whole lot of life into a lesson. Number six is to tap into the students' favorite apps. What are they using on their phones? What are the websites that they're going to? And if we can bring some elements of that into our lesson, then sometimes that can really transform it. For me, years ago, when the app Vine, the little 6-second looping videos were really, really popular, I started to teach vocabulary with Vines. Now, we didn't actually get the app. We just recorded the videos with a handful of iPads that we had in class. But if we can recreate the experience of some of those apps by pulling little elements of them into class, then sometimes that can really capture our students' attention and help them to think about our content in different ways. So for the last four, let's draw ourselves back a little bit and think of some more general things that we can do to generate some of these creative ideas that can bring some life into our lessons. And so number 7 is to step away from the keyboard or step away from the lesson plan book. Sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I know that I have many times by just sitting down at our desk during our prep period or whenever we're lesson planning and we think, okay, now it's time to make the magic happen. A lot of times that's not the way that our creative processes work. And so if we're able to at least get away from that keyboard, get away from that lesson plan book, look out the window, take a quick walk, do something that basically diverts our attention away. I know it may sound like procrastinating a little bit, but sometimes our brain needs that disconnect to be able to really start to generate some of these ideas. And sometimes just stepping away from the keyboard is what we need. Number 8 is to move, as in get your body into motion. There's all sorts of research that talks about the power of physical activity on our brain function. Researchers have found that the brain lights up on an MRI whenever people get into motion. They do physical activity. And that doesn't mean that you have to go run a marathon or do a whole bunch of push-ups. Although push-ups may not be a bad idea, but just something as simple as getting up and taking a quick walk. Just by doing that, a lot of times that stimulates our brain's activity. If you've been sitting for a while, then our cognitive capacities start to sort of be drained a little bit whenever that happens. So getting up and moving sometimes is the best thing we can do to generate some of our creative capacities. Number 9 is to disconnect from the content we're supposed to teach and plug into something else. Just by pulling ourselves away from the thing that we're trying to generate some sort of creative idea on, sometimes is the best thing. The musical Hamilton was created by Lin-Manuel Miranda. The way that he came up with the idea for Hamilton wasn't by sitting down at his desk and thinking, okay, I've got to come up with something creative. He went on vacation and he picked up Ron Chernow's book about Alexander Hamilton. And within minutes, just not even through the first couple of chapters, he'd already decided that he was going to write a screenplay about this and who he was going to start to try to cast in it and the way that he was going to portray all the characters and everything. So he allowed himself to disconnect from what he was thinking about before and plug into something different. So varying the things that you read, maybe pull out a good fiction book or plug into some YouTube videos that make you smile. Again, may sound like procrastination, but big picture, this is the kind of stuff that sometimes generates the really cool ideas that we can use in class. Number 10, and this one may have been the most powerful one in my own career as an educator, and that is to turn to other educators. I know for me, finding Twitter and finding all of the educators that are on Twitter and all the things that they were sharing was huge for me, because I was able to plug into the ideas that they were using in class and some of the things that they were thinking about. And it would jog my own thinking, get me to think about things in a different way. And when I was able to do that, it started to help me brainstorm and how I could remix some of their ideas into my own class. And so finding your tribe, whether it's on Twitter, through a specific hashtag, or on Pinterest, or in the faculty room, if you're able to interact with some of your colleagues, whatever works for you. Go into teaching conferences sometimes. Whatever you need to connect to other educators to bounce ideas off of each other, that can be huge. So there you have it. There are 10 ways to generate great lesson ideas, from some very specific things that you can do all the way out to some bigger picture things to help you think more creatively. And if you've got some ideas on how you come up with creative lesson ideas, please drop them into the comment on this video. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. And if this video is useful to you, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. And I will see you on the next video.